Welcome back to Remotely Speaking Up. And we are fresh back from our mid-season break, where I've just switched over to our Barbados location. And this is our first episode being recorded in Barbados for season 3. And I'm very excited to have with us this week the wonderful team from Hoxby, Lizzie Penny and Alex Hirst. Now, Hoxby is a team of, well, I should say a community of more than 500 freelancers, which serves some of the largest companies across the globe. And on top of that, besides running this amazing company, Alex and Lizzie are about to release a book called Workstyle, which focuses on the changing work revolution and also changing work preferences and the impact of that on our productivity and well-being as a whole. So Alex and Lizzie will tell us a little bit more, but I'm going to toss over to you guys now. Welcome to the show and thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to toss over to you to introduce yourselves a bit. So over to you.
Thank you for having us. I'm Lizzie and I co-founded Hoxby with Alex, as you said. And my background is that when I had children, my first child, my eyes were really opened for the first time to the kind of pervasive inequalities at work, and how work was fully structured around people who were expected to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week, there or thereabouts. And when you have children, that isn't as straightforward as it used to be. And so Alex and I, one night in the pub, as you do in the UK, came up with the word workstyle and the concept that everyone should have the freedom to choose when and where you work. So that was really the start point of everything 8 years ago. And Alex can tell his story in a little bit more.
Yeah, hi, Rochelle. Thanks for having us. My story is one of falling out of love with work, reaching burnout, primarily because I was validating my performance on the number of hours I was putting in. Presenteeism was very present in my life. And eventually I burnt out. And it was only when I burnt out that I realized that was the problem that I had. And I wanted a new way of working whereby I could validate my performance on what I actually delivered rather than when or where I delivered it. And it was kind of that, from my perspective, that brought me to the table at the pub with Lizzie that night to come up with a system of work where we could both have that freedom to decide when and where we worked, be judged on our output. But there wasn't a word or a way of doing that yet. So we created it and we came up with the word workstyle to give us a word and a way of describing our individual preference for how we work and how we get the best out of our work and ourselves.
I love it. And I love the fact that you said you came up with it in a pub. I know so many entrepreneurial stories. Well, your pub meeting sounds a bit more productive. I've heard of these entrepreneurial stories. People say, we're in the pub and we were drunk one night. It just hit us.
Creativity can hit you at any time, right? And I think sometimes
Absolutely.
you need the freedom of a different environment. And Alex and I actually, the word workstyle came from a big whinge about work, about how work was a broken system and how it was, a 200-year-old concept of working 9 to 5, 5 days a week. And from there, we started talking about lifestyle and how you get to choose how you live. You should get to choose how you work. So really, that's what inspired the workstyle word. And we've been using it ever since. And one of the interesting things is when you say the word workstyle, very often people will use it back to you in the same conversation, which we think shows that it's a much needed gap in vocabulary, that we need a word that isn't loaded like, flex pest or shirking from home to describe, the way that you choose to work as an individual.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's this sort of decoupling the work from the physical space. But on top of that, you made a good point, because there tends to be this sort of stigma that comes with when you're working from home, this assumption, like you said, like you're shirking off. And a lot of employees have suffered as a result, even during the pandemic, and women especially, where it was seen that they were not as ambitious and they didn't have the same availability to career opportunities. But I like with this work, well, let's call it the Workstyle Revolution, which you guys are at the forefront,
Yeah, and I think that that's really for us. We're inspired by this because, as the book lays out, this way of working is better for well-being and it's better for productivity. But the thing that really inspires us is those excluded groups who otherwise wouldn't be able to work, who it enables, working this way enables them to fully participate in the workforce. And so in the book, we talk about 7 excluded groups. So those who are aging, which obviously is a massive issue for many businesses around the world, the demographic changes we're going through, people with chronic illness, caring responsibilities, physical disabilities, mental health challenges, parenting, or those who are neurodivergent. Those are 7 groups for whom there is a significant gap currently between the number that wants to work and the number that do. And we feel that what Workstyle does is it redefines the way we work to be more fit for the current era, and particularly enabled by technology as well as attitudes to work, in order to fundamentally level the playing field. And as Alex says, to let people be judged on their output rather than when and where they work. So for us, it's really about the individualization of work. This is about changing work to be individualized rather than a one size fits all.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll turn over to you, Alex.
Yeah, I think that comes back to what we were saying about the labeling of anything that isn't traditional office-based 9-to-5 work as being something inferior to it, which effectively creates an outgroup of people who don't work the traditional way. So within companies, you end up with a division between those who do and those who don't. And what we're saying is that, the basis of that is a 200-year-old system of work that is no longer relevant. We're fortunate to have started Hoxby at a time when the internet enabled us to work from anywhere at any time. The 9-to-5 was conceived of before electricity, never mind the internet. So what's happening is we're still culturally collaborating on the basis of a system that's out of date. And what we need to do is collaborate on the basis of a system that's fit for today. And that's what Workstyle does. It does everything that Lizzie said, but it acknowledges that we live in a digital age. We live in a way of working that is completely different. And we also do a lot of work now that is completely different to the type of work we did 200 years ago.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many people that I work with now in consulting that I've never met. And we do such great work together. I feel like I know them because, as you said, with this digital age, it just makes something more possible. And it just makes me question why we've never pushed back against that 200-year-old system, why people are so happy to go along with it and even to fight for it, but never actually understanding the roots of it and whether or not it is still fit for purpose.
I think it's really interesting you mentioned connection there, because quite often people say to us, well, if you're working remotely, it can be very lonely. And what they don't realize is that more than half of Brits, for instance, suffer from loneliness in the workplace. You can be in a workplace and still be lonely. It just means you're surrounded by people, not that you actually connect with them on a deeper level. Whereas that's more about how you design the culture of your organization. And it's one of the things that Hoxby consults on is virtual leadership and how to maintain culture when working in a kind of globally or locally dispersed environment, which I think in the current working environment that we're in is increasingly important. Almost every organization has some element of remote working. So I think, it's important for us to remember that connection can be equally as powerful, but also there are other massive upsides to working remotely. So even in the coronavirus pandemic, which was horrible circumstances for people to try working this way, and for a lot of people, it was their first experience of working this way, 73% of people said they had an improved work-life balance. And that was at a time when, my goodness, people just were struggling through homeschooling and everything else. And yet, if it works in that context, just think how well it could work if there was widespread adoption of it in the current context.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a perfect segue for you guys to tell us a bit more about Hoxby and the work you do and how also you encourage the embracing of different work styles.
Sure. So, I mean, I just wanted to say kind of, firstly, as it relates to the pandemic, there is a wider appreciation for a new way of working. To your point, Michelle, and sorry, this is slightly going back to the last question, people don't believe it's within their control to change the 9-to-5 office-based system. They believe it's an immutable reality. That's the only way that you work, and you work a variation of it. That's why we've written a book, to actually encourage people to see that there is an alternative and to get behind it, which is why we're calling it a revolution. The book is written to, yes, present the idea, but it also presents our experiences of working in Hoxby, as well as the research that we've undertaken during the process of working this way at Hoxby as well over the last 8 years. So as context, therefore, Hoxby is a place where we wanted to prove that Workstyle works, that you can create a business that gives everybody the freedom to decide their own work styles for themselves. So we did that in 2014, and we're now, as we say, over 500 people working globally as a community. We're connected by a sense of purpose rather than by an office and or fixed working hours. It's about belief and rather than presence.
And as you said, that's 2014. That's way before the pandemic. That's not even a year before. This has been going on for a long time. I remember when we did the research, we released a paper in February 2020 on the changing work revolution. And one of the things that we called it was a silent revolution. And there's an invisible workforce that people are not truly acknowledging, but is slowly increasing. And your book really highlights that and highlights how it serves us rather than us. I find many times we work to serve the work and we forget the purpose of work, where it's meant to increase and improve our lives. But then a lot of people, it's become switched around over the years, where a lot of us, we live to work now. And Workstyle Revolution is actually saying, no, let's reset. Let's think about why we work and how it is the best for us.
And actually, if you get that right, it does work for everyone, because it improves well-being to work this way. And something we've been conducting our own research over the last 4 years through our community of Hoxbys, in order to look at the relationship between autonomy, which is the closest research kind of proxy for well-being. So the connection between autonomy, well-being and productivity. And the thing that we've found is that actually for the relationship between autonomy and productivity is very well documented and very well researched. Lots of people have found in the past that the more autonomous you are, the more productive you are. The thing that we found is for the first time that well-being is a moderating factor for that relationship. So what that means is the Hoxbys who are the happiest are also the most productive. And so I think that also really changes things and should change things for both individuals and employers, because it means that this is something that is intrinsically linked in business performance, not just about being good for you to enjoy work. And the same with diversity. So Workstyle obviously facilitates a very diverse way of working. And we know that collective intelligence and diversity itself, research has shown that leads to more innovation and better business performance. So there are loads of reasons to work in a Workstyle way.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that's where Hoxby really thrives, is having created the conditions for Workstyle. We've created a place of a newfound, unprecedented level of inclusion, and therefore diversity, and therefore collective intelligence.
Yep.
So Hoxby itself brings together diverse minds to solve problems for clients and help clients to improve their impact on the world. So whether that's through helping them to change the way they work, to be more in the guise of Hoxby and Workstyle led, or whether that's through the work they do, the products and services that they have, as Lizzie said, new innovation, communications, and so on. So the range of services that we're able to provide as a result of being collectively intelligent is broad, but also different and perhaps refreshing to what traditional work might be able to achieve.
Yeah, and I do like that inclusion. Now, when we talk about inclusion, that's going a lot further beyond race and sex and marital status and let's say in the UK, as we know them, the very 9 protected characteristics, to now really consider neurodivergence as another thing, because often this isn't something that was taken so much into regard. And I like that, as you said, how Hoxby has been set up that actually you are really embracing and enhancing inclusion on that level as well. But have you found that you experienced any challenges when it came to promoting this idea or encouraging different work styles? Especially, I know across industries, a lot of people challenge that remote work may not be suitable across all industries or some jobs. And we know that there are some jobs that challenge the concept of remote work.
Definitely. And I think we need to be open that Hoxby is an experiment. You know, we set it up as a prototype to test this way of working and see if it worked. And it's not like we just found it worked. We spent 8 years finding ways to make it work and trying to improve it as we go along. So it's been a journey for us. And hopefully that means that through reading the book and working with Hoxby, we can mean that it's less of a journey for other people because we can share with them how we work. But there definitely are challenges to working this way. And I think the biggest challenge is unlearning everything we've learned before. Even Alex and I, who are the leaders of the Workstyle Revolution and who've been championing this for almost a decade, we still feel guilty when we don't work on a Wednesday or when we fold the laundry in the middle of the day, you know? So I think that a lot of it is cultural and mindset. And actually what we found is the younger members of the Hoxby community are the best work stylers because they come into it thinking, this is how I'm going to work. And they have no other preconceived ideas, which is great. The other thing is, I think it's interesting what you say about this not working for everyone potentially, because we often have the complaint levied that this only works for knowledge workers. And for us, firstly, knowledge workers are really a really important part of the demographic that makes up the workforce in the world. Globally, there are estimated to be more than 1 billion knowledge workers. So even just changing those lives could make a massive difference. But the other thing is that we think of work style as much an attitude as it is a structure of work. So in areas where we have a crisis in staffing, so for instance, midwifery in the UK, if we could take more of a work style attitude and people could set their own shift patterns, or they could do some work when and where they choose when they're doing admin, for example, we think that would make a big difference. And actually in the book, there's a case study on Buurtzorg, which is in the healthcare industry, showing how the work style mentality can be applied to the nursing profession.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
That work style mentality is key to enabling collaboration to happen between diverse people. So the way that we've worked historically has been largely in companies and groups of people who look, think, talk, and act the same. And we all agree, and that's very comfortable. But when you create diverse teams, you get, hopefully, differences of opinion, and that can be difficult, more difficult to work in. But what Lizzie's talking about in terms of the work style attitude is, with having the individual freedom to choose when and where you work, you think of yourself more as an individual rather than as someone who works within a 9-to-5 office-based system, one of the majority, a stereotype, if you like. And you think about other people in the same way, as individuals with individual contributions to bring. So you break down a lot of the stereotypes and prejudice that come with lumping people together into groups, and start to recognize the individual qualities of individual people. And that is transformative to collaboration and integration of diverse people to come up with new ideas, better solutions. And that's a challenge for us as an organization, but also for individuals to acknowledge perhaps their own bias or their own prejudice, where they're stereotyping people, and actually focus more on the individual in each case.
Yeah, and I don't think sometimes companies fully understand that this, as you said, work style mentality can be embraced within a company as well. We're not just saying that companies have to go remote. All companies have to go remote. We're not saying that. But if it is that we have a more blended workforce, we're encouraging people to work in different ways that best suit them, then that should be built into the mentality of the workplace. It should be fine for you to fold your laundry in the middle of the day. It should be fine for you to work from home 2 days a week. and maybe from the office 3 days a week, a more hybrid approach. So it's just escaping that mentality. I think where people do push back a lot against remote work is that they're assuming, well, okay, it's not for everyone, it can't work, but they're not actually thinking about how you can adapt it in a way that works best for the company, or some individuals, let's say, who might be neurodiverse or who might have certain physical disabilities, and it might be better for them. So I do agree with both of you when you say it's really that mindset shift that comes behind it.
I think it's interesting because, you know, we've talked about the Hoxby grand experiment, but we really early on learnt 3 important lessons of working in a work style way. The first one is that work needs to be done asynchronously, not synchronously. So you don't have to all be working at the same time to do brilliant work. You just need the right combination of technology to make collaboration work brilliantly. The second thing was that we all need to adopt a digital first mentality. And I think lots of businesses neglect to notice that even if you have one person working remotely, you have a remote team and you should have a digital first mentality. And then the third thing is a trust-based culture. And that is absolutely essential to underpin work style. And I think it's that, like you say, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. This isn't binary. We appreciate that we are at one end of this spectrum of work style. We are really testing this at its absolute maximum. But organizations can run a pilot, dip their toe in the water, but they can't do it without an appreciation of those 3 things: asynchronous, digital first mentality, and it being trust-based.
Absolutely. I think always the trust will be the foundation of any new organizational change. And for those who have really struggled with that remote hybrid change, or even embracing a blended workforce where maybe some people aren't full-time with the company, maybe they're independent contractors, but you want to make them feel a part of the company. It is that trust and thinking about whether or not, what are the issues underlying the organization or within the organization that causes you to question trust in the first place.
And I think we feel that the freelance workforce is too often considered as a contingent part of the workforce rather than an integral part of an organization, and therefore essentially forgotten about within culture and building high performing teams.
Yeah. And presumably that's largely anchored in the basis of trust being built historically by being in the same building, or sharing an employer contract with someone else, and the fact that contractually, because you're all employees, you therefore can trust each other, rather than, and because you're physically present, rather than on necessarily your work you do, your output. So that's a really important part. That shift of what you base trust on is key to the future of work, I think, and incorporating freelancers.
No, I totally agree. And I really look forward to seeing, and I mean, we've seen more of it since the pandemic, people willing to experiment more, people willing to question more, but I hope we see it more on scale, where freelancers and persons who work remotely across the globe that have never been in contact with some of the clients or organizations they work with, I hope to see them being more embraced and seen as a part of the team rather than just casual, rather than just a temporary option or add-on. So
I think,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's particularly important from the perspective of collective intelligence. Collective intelligence works when you have diversity of thought well integrated. And by excluding certain, whether it's a freelance group in the workforce or whether it's other groups, structurally, like parents or carers or those who are older, what you're missing is that diversity of thought. And I think culturally, the thing that needs to underpin that is the opportunity for people to challenge others with positive intent in order to get to better outcomes. So at a cultural level, we think that is absolutely critical. And actually, it's something that underpins everything at Hoxby, that you should be able to challenge constructively.
Yeah, and that's it. I think we got to get comfortable with being challenged as well. And as you said, it's where it comes from a positive place, because I know persons, sometimes challenge is seen as outside the comfort zone. So we want to avoid anything that would be necessarily contentious, but actually it is good for the development of the workforce. So just before we wrap up, can you guys give us a little sneak peek into your Workstyle book that's going to be launched soon? I know I'm looking forward to my copy, Lizzie. I think I sent you an email. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it'll be winging its way.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate to have a sneak preview of the book, and it's just so insightful. So just give our audience a little something to look forward to.
I guess what we would say is the book basically draws on our 8 years of experience of working this way. It explains our origin story. So it's got the pub story, but it also then enlarges upon why this is so important for well-being, for productivity and society. And we have contributions from many academics and specialists that help support that throughout the book. But also really powerfully, we have work style stories that bring to life for people real work stylers and how it has transformed their lives to be able to work in this way. And I think it's fair to say that it's transformed Alex and my lives. And so us being able to put that in the book, but with our touch of humor as well, as you'll know, Rochelle, you know, this is a book that we bring our own personalities to as well. And Alex and I believe that above all, work should be something you enjoy, and hopefully that comes through in the book as well.
Yeah, it's not a boring workbook. You know, it's grounded obviously in research and science and stuff, but it's human. You know, the purpose of the book ultimately is to drive change. We want people to feel like they have a voice and they have the power to shift society away from an archaic 9 to 5 and into work style, which is appropriate for today, for the digital age we live in. It is revolutionary, but we need a revolution, because if we don't change the way we work, then we are only going to fall further and further behind, be less productive, and struggle to solve the problems that we face.
Which includes, as you said, exclusion, burnout, stress, just lack of productivity. There's so many not stressors, but consequences of not moving forward with the time and moving forward with the age, whereas work is concerned. And we've seen a lot of that where mental health has become the forefront now of issues that we face in the workforce. So I really hope everyone gets on the Hoxby Workstyle train and we do take it.
Come join.
So thank you guys so much for joining us. And just before we go, you know, of course, we always want to find out what's your funniest remote or most memorable remote work story. It's been a very interesting 2 years, but you guys have been doing this way before then. So can you tell us, what's your funniest remote work story?
It's a really good question, because we've done some funny stuff. It's fair to say working this way is different. Lizzie and I do a lot of recording videos to engage remotely with the Hoxby community. And one that lives in the memory is when we dressed up in green all-in-one morph suits to deliver the kind of performance update on company performance to the business, which was a lot of fun. I remember recording it vividly. It's that sort of thing that we try and do to inject a bit of humor and to connect people on a human level, you know, connect with people on a human level in the day-to-day task of work, if you like.
Something like a meerkat or an alien looking thing. What is it?
It's literally like a lycra suit that covers your whole body, including your face and head.
Oh my gosh.
And it really leaves nothing to the imagination, Rochelle. Let's just say it that way. So it was something that we felt, we said to the community, if we have 4 green quarters, this is what we'll do. And somehow they made 4 green quarters happen. So we had to do it.
I bet just to see you in those morph suits.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. Oh my gosh. I'm going to go look for a video of that somewhere online.
It's somewhere on there, somewhere online, somewhere. But...
I'm convinced. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you again to our audiences. This is season 3 of Remotely Speaking Up. And this has been Alex Penny. This has been Alex Hirst and Liz Penny from Hoxby speaking to us about the Workstyle Revolution and how it changes our productivity and well-being in general, well, our work life. So thank you, and we will see you next week. This is Remotely Speaking Up, and take care for now. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. you.